you. How are you, my beautiful planty people? I hope you were doing well today. I am doing well. Today I am doing something a little different. Today I'm going to run you through my top, I think I've got 9 things that I have changed in my plant care since the beginning of all of this craziness that have really been game changers for me. Things that I've kind of learned along the way, things that I have tweaked that have made the biggest impact in my houseplant care routine. So that is what we're talking about today. For those of you who are new here, hi, hello, welcome. My name is Nikki and this is my channel, Plants, Pots, and Whatnots. And as always for my GFPs, my wonderful, lovely gluttons for punishment who keep coming back for more. I love you guys so much. So much, like this much. Anyways, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys so much. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, I always forget this. I'm trying to get better at remembering. If you have an Instagram account and you like following planty Instagrams, please go ahead and follow me. Here is my account. I post updates on plants over there. I post little tips and tricks, things that just randomly come to my head, pictures of new plants, those sorts of things. So if you are an Instagrammer or just like to kind of follow along, or you just like to look at pretty pictures of plants, then go ahead and hang out with me over there. I would love to have you. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into my top 9 game-changing plant routine things. I don't even know what to call them. Okay, so I'm gonna run you through this list. They are in no particular order. Now, everybody does things differently. These are just the things that I have changed or things that I now do, or that I have shifted my mindset to that seem to have made the biggest difference for me as a plant parent in general. You know, whether it be care or just like mindset, those kinds of things. I hope that makes any sense. So the first one is fertilizing. It didn't really hit home as to how important fertilizing my indoor plants was for quite some time. Like I used to like, you know, fertilize them when I remembered or whatever. But since I got into like an actual fertilizing routine and have nailed down some fertilizers that I really find are making a difference, that's when I noticed a massive change in my collection. I was having faster growth. I was having bigger leaves. The plants were just overall more healthy. Their foliage was shinier and sparklier, and you see where I'm going with this, right? Overall, it was just better. So I'll tell you what I what I'm doing now, and in hopes that, well, really any of this stuff can help you at all. So previously I was fertilizing once every probably 2 months or so, 3 months maybe, with just a general all-purpose fertilizer. I used to use Miracle Grow, and actually it's a really good fertilizer. I know I don't personally love the actual soil. I don't like their potting soil much, but their fertilizer is actually really good. Then occasionally I would fertilize with like a soil enhancer. Marfil's a really great one. What else? Liquid Dirt is another really good one. But when it comes to nowadays, I'm actually combining the 2 methods on an ongoing basis. So with every watering, I'm using a soil enhancer. And so those are things like the Liquid Dirt, Marfil, and those kinds of things. They're much more mild and they're not actually technically a fertilizer. They don't have like an NPK value. So they just don't have quite as much nutrients as an actual fertilizer that has an NPK value would offer your plant. So I'll water every single watering with a soil enhancer, and then once a month, so every 4th watering usually, because I usually water my plants about once a week, but once a month I will give them a watering with the stronger fertilizer. Now right now I'm using Schultz, but any you know, balanced fertilizer would be just fine. Okay, so since I've done that, like I said before, I've noticed massive changes in my plants, and that has been a huge game changer. I know I've talked to a few people over the past couple of years, and because I get a lot of questions and things like that, one of the first questions, if a plant isn't growing, or is having some discoloring of leaves that doesn't seem to have any other reason behind it. There's no pests, the lighting is good, the watering is good. My one question will always be after that, do you fertilize, or how often do you fertilize? Now, keep in mind, it is possible to over fertilize your plants. However, if you follow the instructions on the actual fertilizer itself, a good rule of thumb is to go down to like 3/4 or a half of what the recommended dose is. And I find that works well. Now, there are some plants that just pack a punch. Philodendron Florida Ghost is one of them. It really likes a lot of the fertilizer. It's a heavy feeder. There's a few others that I have in my collection right now, and it's not even coming to my mind. I'd have to think way too hard about it right now. But you'll kind of get your own groove. But fertilizing is really important. And, every now and then I'll hear somebody like, oh, I don't fertilize my plants. And I was like, oh, you just don't. Like, they need that because they're not outside getting the nutrients that would naturally be regenerating in the soil, and from things from the rain and from just being outdoors in their natural environment. They're in a potting soil that eventually loses its natural nutrients over time, so we have to kind of keep up with that and replenish it. And it works. Please fertilize your plants. Okay, this is gonna be forever if I go on that long about each one of those. So that was my first tip. Is the change in fertilizer that has made a huge difference. Okay, number two. Number two is a bit one of those ones that is highly discussed. One of those plant care things that is you're kind of either on one side of the fence or the other. So this particular point is about humidity. Now, with a lot of plant care advice that you're going to hear, there's so many different things that you have to consider when you're listening to plant advice. And one of the things that I think not a lot of people talk about when they talk about plant care and what advice to listen to, what advice not to listen to, is it depends on what your goals are. The majority of plants will be absolutely fine and grow okay and be healthy in 40 to 50% humidity. But if you increase your humidity, in an area that is safe to do so, you don't want to get 70, 80, 90% humidity in your home. It's bad for your health. It's bad for the house itself. But plants, because they are tropical, they come from environments that are warm and that are humid. So really we have to consider that when we're thinking about what is going to be the optimal growing conditions for these plants. So if you want your plant to grow the best, then absolutely you want higher humidity. It's not like a prerequisite to have super high humidity in your home for your plants to grow and be pretty. But I think that's where a lot of people don't mention it. When people say, humidity is key. Well, it depends on what your goal is. If you just want plants in your home because you really love them, then, keeping your home at 40, 50% humidity is absolutely fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be extra, then absolutely bump up your humidity, get a greenhouse, get a Millsbo cabinet, get a terrarium, get some humidifiers, and bump up your humidity. You can comfortably have your humidity around 65% in your home, and even that would be enough, and that would be a better growing scenario for a lot of plants. So that was one of the things that I kind of had to wrap my brain around, because there's just so much conflicting people. Everybody's like, you don't need humidity to grow plants. And then other people are like, yes, you do. And it's like, yeah. Again, it depends on what you're looking for, what kind of plant parent you are, what your expectations for your plants are. So that's something that has finally kind of sunk in. I know I am the type of plant parent that wants the you know, the best growing conditions that I can get. So I do bump up my humidity. And do I get increased growth? Oh, heck yes. Do I get a better, healthier, more happy plant? Yes, because that's the conditions that they are used to. That's where they come from. You know, when we're bringing these plants out of tropical locations and sticking them in our home and, you know, like the Great White North, or, you know, some dry place like Arizona, and then we just expect them to do well without, you know, giving them what they would normally have. It's just mean for the plant. But anyway, most plants will be just fine. They'll grow, you know, normally in regular household humidity situations. Okay, that was a rant. Let's move on to game changer number 3. Okay, this one is something that I've started doing recently, and this was because I really just got thinking about propagation. Why do we propagate in, you know, different types of media? So why do we propagate in water? Why do we propagate in perlite or moss or pon or leca? And really what I think it comes down to is it's for us. We do it so we can see the root growth. We know that the plant is growing well. But I mean, traditionally, plants were grown and rooted and propagated in soil. And so recently I've been doing a lot of experimenting with growing different plants or rooting different plants in soil as opposed to any other media. And honestly, I have had some like mind-blowing success. So for example, I just propagated my philodendron mammae, and in the past I have rooted it in moss and I've rooted it in perlite. They work, absolutely. But I found that they were kind of going limp too often. So it was like, unless I kept up with the watering like very, very regularly, they just weren't getting enough. Also, when you root directly into soil as opposed to using something else where that plant has to build water roots. So if you're rooting in water, leca, perlite, moss, the plant grows water roots. Those are those beautiful white roots that we see when we're looking through, you know, our little clear containers and we can see the beautiful little white roots growing in there. Those are water roots. So if you're keeping it in a media like that ongoing, if you're somebody that uses leca or pon, that's totally fine. But if you're going to switch it over to soil eventually, then the plant is going to have to reacclimate. So it's going to have to basically convert all of its root growth into soil roots. So you're really not doing the plant any favors by saying, oh yes, it's finally growing roots. And now you switch it and that's like, oh, now I gotta grow roots all over again. You know what I mean? So then you're gonna find that it's not growing new leaves because the plant is now refocusing its energy into growing different roots. I hope that makes sense. So, do I still propagate in soil, perlite, or perlite, moss, etc.? Yes, I actually don't propagate in water. I've never been a water propagator, other than if it's like a trailing philodendron or pothos or something like that. But all of my aeroids, I'm more, you know, I don't know what you want to call them, bougie. Aeroids and stuff like that, I usually will propagate in perlite. Has been one of my favorites recently, until I started propagating in soil. Anyway, give it a try. Do an experiment for yourself at home. Take one plant, take 4 different cuttings, put one in water, one in moss, one in perlite, and one in soil. Give them all the same lighting conditions, all of the same humidity, and just kind of watch what happens over time. You know, for the ones that you're going to eventually switch to soil after a time, just kind of take a running log. So switch them over, maybe take a photo once a week or something, and just kind of see in a year's time where that plant is. And I'm willing to bet you that the one that you propagated in soil is going to end up being bigger, and it's going to grow faster for you because it's not having to stop to regrow roots partway through, if that makes any sense. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, try it at home, try experimenting at home, and let me know what you find. Maybe you find something different. This is what I've found, but I love experimenting, and I love to hear that you guys are experimenting and trying to find out what works for you. So that is the hiccups. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next thing that I really had to work out was lighting. And there is so much involved when it comes to lighting. I definitely understand, because I've experienced it, how overwhelming it can be trying to figure out what exactly medium to bright indirect light is. For my house in particular, this is what you really have to do, is you really have to walk around your house, really analyze what light you have coming into your home. Because I will tell you that light that seems bright to us may not be bright to your plants. So keep that in mind. When we're saying, like, if you hear like direct light, that is like sun can directly shine on your plant for like an extended period of time. When you hear bright indirect light, that may be pulled slightly back from like a southwest facing window sort of idea. And again, this is dependent on where you are. I am in Ontario, Canada, so southwest light is our brightest. All of the plants in my front window here, this is a northwest facing window. So we get some really nice light coming in there from about maybe 3 o'clock in the 2 o'clock in the afternoon till the sun goes down. So it's kind of nice. But as far as the rest of my house is concerned, it's not that bright. Do you know what I'm saying? So I had to get creative, and I do grow the majority of my plants with grow lights. Even the plants in my front window where it does get that afternoon, evening light, I also have lights on those shelves. So in the beginning, I knew light was important, but I didn't really have it down packed. Sorry, it's really windy today, and I've got my windows open because it's beautiful, but it might be a little noisy. I'm hoping you can't hear that too much. It feels great. Anyways, so you really have to analyze your light. If you can, Amazon has a really great light meter. Now they are better for measuring actual sunlight, not quite as accurate with grow light situation. But mine actually, the one that I got, I'll link it in my Amazon storefront under lighting. It seems to be fairly accurate when it comes to the grow lights. And so do with that information what you will, but light meters can be really handy in kind of trying to figure out what sort of light your house gets and what sort of light you're able to provide for your plants. But definitely in my situation, investing in some really great grow lights has been an absolute game changer. Before, I just kind of like tried to put things where I thought it was bright, but it just it wasn't cutting it. And I definitely notice a difference when, you know, I get the bright idea to move a plant from like what I thought was okay light into what I thought was like also okay light, but it turns out it's not. Like, the plant definitely lets me know. So just know that there are options out there if your home doesn't have great light like mine, and they don't have to cost an arm and a leg. I have some really great lighting options in my Amazon storefront, so if you want to check those out. I also have a video on all of the different lighting that I do use. if that's something that you maybe want to check out as well. And I kind of explain which situations I use those lights in. Now I have switched a couple of those up now, so maybe I should do a new updated lighting video, but let me know if that's something that you want to see, and I can do that. Anyway, lighting is one of the most important things for your plants. If your plants aren't getting the proper amount of light, they are not going to grow and thrive. Same sort of scenario like I was saying with the humidity. You know, a lot of situations, they'll do okay. They may not grow as fast and whatever, but if you take that same plant and give it the light that it wants, that it needs, you're going to notice a massive day and night shift in the overall growth and health of the plant. So okay, so that was lighting. Let's go ahead and move on to the next topic, which is cleaning your leaves. Oh. Did you all groan? So I know this is one of those things that everybody's like, oh my God, it's so boring and it takes me forever. And the bigger collection you have, the longer it takes. I get it. I get it. But again, it depends on what your outcome is, what your goals are. If you clean your leaves on a regular basis, I would say every 3 to 4 weeks, you're going to notice a difference in your plants. The plants are going to be happier. They can photosynthesize properly. They can take in all of their nutrients from the sun and actually respond like they're supposed to. Again, keep in mind, we're keeping them inside where they don't have the wind and the rain that they would normally have in an outdoor scenario. And we're putting them inside where there's dust and dander and I don't even want to think of what else floats around in the air that lands on the leaves, and then eventually that coating builds up and it's no good for anyone. So I clean my leaves every 3 to 4 weeks, and not only do they look better because they're nice and clean and shiny, but the plant is overall more healthy. This doesn't need to get fancy, and I would really encourage you to stay away from anything that is going to stay in the tissue of the plant. I've heard people use things like mayonnaise. I really don't recommend doing that, like, at all. It clogs the pores in the plant. Like, imagine putting mayonnaise on your face and getting that into your pores. It's the same sort of scenario with your plants. It just clogs up their pores and they're not able to do what they are needing to do. So please don't use mayonnaise. It may be shiny, but it's not good for your plants. So other things that I don't recommend, I don't really recommend leaf shine. I would probably lean towards a little bit more natural things. I personally, if I'm just doing a leaf clean and not like a pest treatment, I will use a little dish of distilled water with a little bit of lemon juice and like a drop of vinegar. Vinegar is great for getting rid of hard water spots. So if I have hard water spots, I'll use the vinegar. But otherwise I just use water and a little bit of lemon juice, and I wipe the leaf down really well, like so it's soaking, and then I leave it sit for 3 to 5 minutes, and then I go back with a clean cloth with distilled water, wash it all off, and then I dry each leaf individually. And I know you're like, that's a lot. It is a lot, but again, it depends on what your goals are. Like I said, my goal is to have my plants looking healthy and beautiful, and that's just how I am. I'm not saying that, you know, everybody has to be like that, and you don't have to do that, but it's just the little thing in my brain that says, you know, they have to be that way. So anyways, so cleaning your leaves is huge. That's really all I have to say on that one. Let's go ahead and move on to the next. Okay, we are down to our last 3 game-changing plant parent. What am I gonna call this? Oh my goodness. Okay, the next one is my watering game. So, in the beginning, for the first probably year, I would say that my collection was like crazy. I used to spot water, on the spot water, which is basically just going around to all of my plants and just kind of like, you know, doing a little one of these. When I'd see a little bit of water starting to pool in the tray, then I'd stop and that was it. And if you do, again, I feel like I have to put a disclaimer on everything I say because it never fails that somebody's gonna be like, well, that's not what I do. And that's fine. It's totally fine. And you know what? In the very last point of this, I will explain why that's fine. But in my personal opinion, and for the opinions of most like professional growers and whatnot, it's better for your plant, better for the roots of your plant to take that plant to the sink or somewhere where you can flush it through a couple times. So what I'll do now is I'll take my plants to the sink. I have that really awesome Amazon rollout drain rack that I use in my sink. That in itself is a game changer. If you watched my Amazon favorites video, you'll know that that thing I swear by. I love it. I tell everybody about it. I'm sure people are sick of hearing about it, but honestly, it's a game changer. Anyways, so I take them to my sink, I set them on my little drain rack, I take my water and I go ahead and pour it until it, you know, starts to overflow, or before it overflows. Let it drain all the way through so it's pouring out of the drain hole, and then I go ahead and do that a second time. Now, depending on the soil composure or soil mixture that I'm using, sometimes I'll even give it a third go through. If it's a really like chunky mix and I want to really make sure that it's drenched, sometimes I'll give that a third watering as well. So what that does is it makes sure the soil is entirely wet all the way around the pot, all the way down and through. Because what happens if you just water a little bit like this, it'll just kind of trickle down from certain spots in the soil and it won't completely saturate the entire soil. So when you're running it through multiple times, you have a better chance of making sure all of the soil is wet. And why is that important? I'm going to tell you. So as you know, roots don't grow just in one spot in the plant. They come out, they branch out, and what we want to do is make sure that we're getting all of the roots wet. Also, when you're watering more so on the top of the soil, that doesn't create a strong root system because the roots don't have to search down or grow longer to reach the moisture. So they will stay closer to the top of the pot where the moisture is. But when you're flushing it all the way through, that moisture is going right down to the bottom of the pot and all the way through. So the roots are able to kind of grow out and expand just like they would out in, you know, in nature. So it really is good to flush your plants all the way through. And I've noticed a change. It is a little bit more time consuming, obviously, because you're having to carry plants in. But I think my plants have really responded well to that. So if that's something that you're able to do, I highly recommend it. Usually about one watering a month. So once every 4 weeks. You know, if I'm in a rush, but some plants need water, I'll go around and just spot water them. But for the most part, for my major watering days and stuff, I am carrying them all to the sink. Now, I know that this is impossible with every plant. My Dieffenbachia, for example, weighs about 100 pounds, if not more. There's no way I'm carrying that anywhere. I push it across the floor with my foot if I have to move it for any reason. So for plants like that, obviously it's fine. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. You just want to make sure that you're getting all the way around the pot and that it is coming down into the tray. Even if you need to take a little, you know, those little plunger things and suck the water out of the tray and then water it again and then suck the water out of the tray, then you're getting more water flushing through down into the bottom of the pot. Okay, that was long. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, and I kind of touched on this already, so I'm not going to go too much into this, but that is a moisture meter. So in the beginning, I relied very heavily on using a moisture meter, and it was like the holy grail, the Bible, whatever my moisture meter said, that's by golly what we did. But over time, I started to notice that it wasn't always working. And some plants I would get root rot, and I'm like, what is going on? It said it was dry. And the reason that was a problem was because I started really using chunkier mixes and that kind of thing, a lot of my own amendments. And for chunkier soil mixes, they don't read properly. So that soil could still be, or that mix could still be quite wet. But because when you're sticking those probes down into a chunkier mix, they're not necessarily all touching the probes like they should. So they're gonna read as though they're dry because they're not like completely around it. I hope that makes sense. So what I do now is kind of a combination. So I will stick the moisture meter down there. I'll see what it reads, take that with a grain of salt. Then I'll take the moisture meter out and kind of look at the tip of the moisture meter. If the ends of the probes have moist soil stuck to them, then I know there is still moisture down in there. If I pull that moisture meter out and there is no soil stuck to the probes, then I know that the plant is dry, at least as far down as I put that moisture meter. Now, the other thing when you're using a moisture meter is you have to keep in mind where the roots are. So, for example, if you just stick your moisture meter like this far, let's say you have a pot that's this deep, okay? So this is the top of the pot. If you just stick the moisture meter down this far, obviously the top portion is going to be drier than the middle, and definitely more dry than the bottom portion of the soil. So what you really want to do is get it down to where the roots of the plant would be. I know that can be tricky, especially if you're not really sure how deep your roots go, but I usually put it at least halfway, if not more, down into the pot where I want the roots to be more moist. So that's kind of how I use the moisture meter now, but I also use that in conjunction with the good old sticking your finger in the soil. You can feel if the soil is moist or not. So usually I'll put the moisture meter in there first to see how that goes, check those things that I just mentioned. And then if I'm still kind of unsure, I'll just stick my finger down there, see if I can feel any moisture. Even with chunkier mixes, this is sometimes a little tricky. So you might have to try a couple different spots. Yeah, and that's how I do things. But you don't necessarily even need to, if you don't like using your finger, you can also use a chopstick. In any case, don't rely 100% on your moisture meter. They are an absolutely wonderful tool, but especially if you have chunkier mixes, they're not going to be as effective. So keep your soil choice in mind and the soil that you're using in conjunction with your moisture meter. I hope that made sense. Okay, let's move on to the very last one. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about that was kind of a game changer for me is less about a specific type of care, but more so just an overall plant parent experience. So one thing that was really important for me to learn, and what I think is important for everybody to learn, is everybody's plant parenting experience is different. Everybody has different expectations as to what their collection should be, what they want their collection to be, and so forth. So whereas I explained earlier how I really want to try as much as possible to give my plants optimal conditions, optimal humidity, optimal lighting, and optimal cleaning and all of those kinds of things, that may not be the goal for everybody else. That may not even be feasible for more other people. Because I work from home, I have the time to go ahead and put into my plants. And if you don't care about all those stupid little things like I do, that's totally fine. And what I learned was there's so many different types of plant parents, and everyone does things differently. So when you see care videos, when you see somebody growing a plant, maybe you see a photo on Instagram, and they say, I did this with this plant, or I'm doing this now, or I'm using this product, and maybe that's not what you do. Maybe just rein it in a little and say, you know what? If it's working for you, that's amazing. If somebody's asking for advice, maybe their plant isn't doing well, then you can politely offer, this is what I do, maybe it will help you as well. But it's never helpful to anyone to criticize you know, what someone else is doing, because again, maybe their overall goal is not the same as yours. Maybe they just enjoy growing plants. They don't care as much about super fast growth, and that's totally fine. So we need to just let plant parents be plant parents, whatever that might look like. So, you know, just a little bit more love and a little less judginess. Judginess. It's a new word. We're going to use it. Anyway, I hope that made sense. It was just really important for me to understand that, you know, even watching all of these different care videos and then me looking at mine and going, well, mine's thriving and that's not what I'm doing. You know, you kind of have to, you know, take bits of advice and, like I said before, try things, do experiments, work with what you have and what your home has to offer and what your time allows you to do, and go from there. And that's it. It will be a much less stressful experience if everybody can just get on board with the fact that everybody's different and does their whole plant game a little bit differently. Okay. That is pretty much all I wanted to say today, which was a lot. I know, I'm sorry, this is a little bit long and ranty. This is my 4th video that I filmed today, and I'm gonna lose my voice here soon. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would also like to know what game-changing plant things that you have changed in your plant care or just in your plant parent life that have made the biggest impact for you. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments. I am very curious to know, are some of these things that you have changed that have worked for you, or is there something totally different that works for you that I didn't mention? Let me know. Okay, thank you guys so much for liking, watching, commenting, and subscribing. If you're not subscribed already, please consider doing so. It is a huge help for my channel, and I really do appreciate it. Here we come, 10K. So exciting. Okay, I would like you all to have an amazing and wonderful and lovely day, night, week, month, and year. I love you all to bitty bits, and I'll see you in the next video. Mwah!